Welcome. What is up, bros? It's T Shroom, and you're tuned into the first live crypto news show of the trading day. I'm up the earliest, guys. It's just the reality of it. I'm live Wednesdays. I'm live Mondays. I'm live Fridays. I'm live every single weekday at 9 a.m. So let's go ahead and get started by taking a look at none other than the Bitcoin charts. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. As you can see, it is not going the way that you might want it to. From the tops here that we had on Tuesday, January 2nd, just hours ago, I'm here on the 4-hour chart, Bitcoin actually wicked down 11%. So as you can see, that is not favorable by any means. It wicked down all the way down to 40,600 per coin, breaking through this control point here and also breaking through this uptrending line of what was support. Now, you'll see that the active trading price right now is actually 42,400, right? And that is showing that it's trying to get back in line with where, this is a manually drawn line, so it's somewhere around here. It's trying to get back in line with wherever this line of support is being attended to the most directly by traders. I had it drawn in accordance with these wicks right here, so that's about right. That's about where it's trying to get back up to. But in order to understand why this happened, T-Shroom, why was there a giant dip down? Well, first you have to realize Bitcoin had just broken out of this wedge here, and what's going to happen whenever there's volatility is probably more volatility. And that's exactly what we got. So at the very, very surface level of just taking a look at this chart, you can see, and we observed this yesterday, that the MACD lines were starting to curl over on the 4-hour, right? And then they crossed, right? That's a bearish move. That's not good. Now, I wouldn't necessarily expect an 11% correction wick to wick that we got here, right? But it's definitely bearish for that moment, for that intraday trading moment, right? So the result of it is somewhat bearish for the charts. We did get a red histogram that went deep, penetrated deep, all the way back to the December 26 levels. And of course, if we go back out to the charts and see kind of where that price action is, that was a low, right? That was when Bitcoin came down and tested, put in the second wick that even defines the uptrending line of support here, and tested those lows. So ultimately, am I worried here? It kind of makes sense to me. This doesn't really surprise me that this has happened here. It's volatile, and it doesn't put us any further back than where we were on December 18th, right? So just as recently as December 18th, we were at these prices, okay? And where we are now, and that's just the wick, right? Where we are now, we were here just days ago, December 31st. So this isn't really a crash. This isn't really something to be extremely upset about, but it is something to monitor because the price has moved quite significantly. Even though it's not in extreme volatility, it is in volatility. So we have to figure out why. And I'm going to be, in this live stream, I'm going to be doing a post-mortem because I have done a few hours of research this morning to try to see what the heck is going on. I'm pretty sure I have a couple of different theories to present to you, but I also have kind of a smoking gun that'll hopefully show you guys what exactly is going on here and why Bitcoin ultimately corrected. Now, as the thumbnail may suggest, there seemed to have been a warning yesterday by Jim Cramer, right? Because that was kind of the big story. It's what here on Investing Bros we covered as our main story on our 3 p.m. show. And it's essentially this, that Jim Cramer, he's the inverse indicator. What does that mean? It means whenever he says, I'm going to come out and I'm going to buy a share of Apple, the next day, sometimes Apple will have collapsed, right? So he's the inverse indicator. So yesterday he came out and said some bullish things about Bitcoin. Said, look, the next day it didn't quite collapse, but right, it saw a big move lower. Let's go ahead and look at the chat here before I dig too much into some of the evidence that I've found. I see Red Elephant saying, GM everybody. So that's really, really great. Let's see. Gia S was the first in the chat, it looks like. But Nancy Croy wasn't too far behind. You got to love it. Nancy Croy, of course, remember, was the very first chat of 2024. Army Piper coming in saying, good morning, all. You got to love it. Army, I'm going to show you everything I was sending. I was blowing up Army's inbox with all kinds of stuff, and now I'm going to try to put the dots together for him. Keep in mind, guys, there's a few different explanations for why price made a move lower, but ultimately, I do think that there's a pretty obvious reason why price went lower. But again, just kind of looking at the face of it, the chart price, which I'll go back over to briefly, was experiencing volatility. Yes, it's a breakout, and yes, this should have been bullish and continued to get a bit up in theory, but it didn't, and it retraced, and it hasn't really gone. It hasn't gone lower than the lowest point in this wedge here. So I'm sitting here, I'm not thinking that this is really all that scary, but I do kind of want an explanation. Why didn't we get a bit higher? Has something changed with the ETFs, right? Because that's the biggest prevailing tailwind kind of propelling prices in the digital asset industry higher, right? Is that Bitcoin spot ETF that you all have heard of and know and love at this point, right? Remington Peralt said, "Inverse Kramer strikes again." Dang it. Yes. So that's kind of the overall feeling here. And then Zindanji Photo said, "Fake dump, LOL. Next couple hours, I think we recover." So another good thing to say here at the front of the show is I bought Bitcoin. So I bought, it's called an ETF called BitX. So BITX or Z, as they say across the pond. No, that's Z. Never mind. Disregard. Anyway, I bought Bitcoin exposed ETF. That is a double leveraged ETF of Bitcoin futures. So you can go ahead and check that out for yourself. I'm not going to pull up the charts because it looks pretty much like Bitcoin, just with a lot less volume. Be careful with buying that one because it only has, I was actually looking this morning, 200 million assets under management. So it's kind of strange, but anyway, I bought Bitcoin, so that should give you a little bit of consolation here about what my personal view is on the market, is that it's not going anywhere, right? And I'm going to give you a little bit of a postmortem here. Nothing bad has really happened in my perspective, but we are facing some volatility. We're getting into some turbulence. Tim and I, we say so often, we say practice good risk management, get NordVPN, which you absolutely should do, for security. And then really there's not that much volatility except to the upside for Bitcoin. Well, this should finally be a lesson to you all, that there can be quick, swift, and somewhat extreme volatility in crypto. And after all, Bitcoin is still down 5.6% right on the day. So it is scary, right, for some, especially if you are newer. All right, let's see. We got a comment here. BWC1313 said there's no way there was going to be a dump before an ETF approval. Anyways, so maybe this is actually a clue that the approval is imminent. Interesting. Playing some 4D chess. All right, well, it sounds like you guys are hungry for the truth. So let's go ahead and get into it. It's really simple, guys. The Dixie moved up. So, no, seriously. This really is kind of, in my view, this is kind of, now you could say this is a reaction to folks selling Bitcoin and moving back into USD. Maybe. No, I think this is kind of the reason. The Dixie has sliced through the midline of the Bollinger Band here. This is today, right? I'm off the 4-hour. This is back onto the daily chart here. You can see, the Dixie is trying to push higher, testing higher, I would say. You got a bull cross here on the MACD lines. So what does this mean? Well, cryptocurrency, kind of is in the name, currency. This is a basket of the dollar. The dollar is the dominant currency in the world. And it just got a boost in terms of purchasing power, right? Relative to commodities, other assets, and other baskets of goods. That's how you can look for yourself how the Dixie is calculated. But ultimately, the dollar just got stronger a little bit. And so it kind of makes sense that Bitcoin just got weaker. So that's the next thing, right, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, most professional traders are going to stop there because that's pretty much all you need to know. Guys, this is textbook, just chart movement, rotation of liquidity. This is really not rocket science. You see Bitcoin move down, Dixie moved up. It's a tit-for-tat game. This is two currencies, the currency wars. And we're going to get into a little bit more currency wars as we start to put on our tinfoil hat and go deeper into the excavation phase of this situation. All right, well, we'll also take a look here at the liquidity levels that were kind of sopped up here, kind of hoovered up. And as you can see, this Bitcoin chart here, it's a little bit Tough to see. So the candlesticks are still price, but then the yellow bit, and Tim references this all the time, the yellow bits are millions of dollars worth of liquidity, right? So when you get into the yellow, you're looking at tens, if not hundreds of pockets of liquidity. So you can see Bitcoin came down and ate through this 44.5, but that was happening, pretty early on this morning at 6:30 a.m., right? And then it a little bit later on by 6:45, it had eaten through as low as 41 level of liquidity before it kind of wicked down in an extreme fashion and then came back up and whipsawed a lot of traders, probably not in America, but maybe in, I guess it would have been Asia. And I do have a story on that here in just a second. Let's actually jump over to that because this could play a role. So we're asking, like, why? Why did this happen, right? You were warned about some some crazy liquidity event. Not liquidity event, some volatility. Well, over in the Philippines, this could be one explanation of a compounding force that led to this. So the Philippines bourse, say, technical issue caused trading halt. So this is an index of the Philippine stock market, from what I understand. And the bourse said in a memorandum that it's still probing the root cause of the issue with a third-party front-end system provider. Trading was halted shortly after the market opened at 9:30 a.m. and resumed at 11:56 a.m. The main stock index closed at 0.8%. There's been frustration from traders. People want continuity. Yeah, okay. So, but ultimately here, I don't think this is the reason. It could have been a contributing factor, as I said, for Bitcoin's price coming down. However, I do give it some credence because while the stock market of the Philippines is not Bitcoin, right, there's certainly a potential for rotation, heavy rotation all of a sudden, right? Traders didn't know that the market was going to get halted in the Philippines, and it's not just the Philippines that are trading that market. Every stock market, every major market is traded internationally when that market is open, right? And so the Philippine market was open. It got halted. Traders did not anticipate that. And that could have absolutely been a contributing factor to a major move, not only on Bitcoin, but also in the Dixie, right? As the Dixie has gapped up here, right? So it's very important to remember or to kind of think about that as well. Taking a look at the 10-year Treasury yields as well, you can see that those have had a spike up as well, kind of testing this midline of the Bollinger Band there for the 10-year yields, getting up to almost it's right now kind of testing that 4% mark, which is a big psychological mark. We'll leave the 10 years alone for now, but I just did want to bring that to your attention that it's not just the Dixie, it is also the 10-year yield. So let's keep moving, though. We've taken a look at the liquidations. We've taken a look at the Philippine stock market that also had some craziness going on. But here's one more thing that I wanted to bring your attention before I get into what I think the true reason for this is. Now, this is another, potentially contributing force that is important to currency markets. This is Saudi Arabia and EU officially joined BRICS. Let's look at some of the details here. So Saudi Arabia, along with the UAE, Egypt, Iran, and Ethiopia joined BRICS on January 1st, doubling its membership to 10, with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa as the original members. BRICS, BRICS. Oh, now it's all coming together. Right. Expansion of the BRICS multilateral bloc to include Saudi Arabia and UAE augurs extremely well amid ongoing geopolitical and economic challenges confronting the world economy. Written by an associate professor of finance at Edinburgh Business School. Cool. At a Dubai branch of that. Cool. So, somewhat important to know the context of who's writing that sentence, I guess. Both Saudi Arabia and UAE among the richest countries on a per capita basis and home to the biggest sovereign wealth funds create enormous growth opportunities through investment, trade, and commerce. Okay, so that's a little bit of the facts on the ground there. Now, why did I just read that? Who cares if this happened? Well, this BRICS movement is another movement that involves what? Currencies, right? Okay, so you have three really big parties right here. You have the Dixie, the dollar, right? You have Bitcoin, which is kind of this neutral, immutable currency that well, we'll just leave it there. It's a neutral, immutable currency. And then you have the BRICS nations, which the BRICS nations, right, it's kind of uncertain exactly which currency they're all going to shake out and go with here, but it looks like they're generally just against the dollar, against the Dixie, right? They're trying to proceed into a financial and economic future where the dollar is no longer the dominant means of measurement, right? And say what you this episode is definitely not by any means an analysis of that phenomenon. I'm just bringing to you all the data point that on January 1st, two very big countries by GDP and significance in their foreign wealth funds came online with BRICS, which is opposed to, by definition, the dollar and to some extent Bitcoin. Although, as we play the future, if we were to fast forward the future, I think that BRICS and cryptocurrency may have a closer relationship than you might expect, in a way that you might not expect, but that's for another time to discuss. All right, I'm tempted to go back to the chat. We have a good bit of time left in the show. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back to the chat, and then we're going to go back, and I'm going to show you guys the smoking gun of what I really think is to blame for this extreme volatility all of a sudden, in addition to what I already said is pretty obvious, is a big volatility spike just in the dollar index, right? So a 2% move in the matter of just 4 days is pretty intense, right? And then for it to move 1.9%, 1.1%, excuse me, in just 2 days, or just 24 hours, is very, very volatile for the Dixie. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to check it out. One thing I'll point out, look at this move right here, okay? So from December 11th, which happens to be my birthday, down to December 14th, you saw a 2.2%. So volatility, nothing new to the Dixie. So let's check it out from 11th through the 14th on the Bitcoin price. So that would take us all the way back. Yeah, I'm on the 4 hour. Let me go back to the daily really quickly. Why am I doing this? I'm illustrating the correlation between the Dixie and the dollar for those of you who don't know. So on the 11th, it came down, but by the time that the 14th came around, you were right back up. So there was a lot of volatility in this period as well. And if you look at it, I mean, these candlesticks are similarly sized. This one has a much bigger wick to the downside than this one does. But hopefully, again, this is just kind of illustrating that, to me, the Dixie move, the dollar move, relative to a basket of other goods and commodities out there, that is really probably 80% of the smoking gun here. But in just a second, I'm going to show you guys another piece of the puzzle that I think is also pretty significant. The kid come and said, I'm shroom, we're all shroom. Wow, I really appreciate that. And you spelled it both different ways there, and I appreciate it. Let's see, Kasha Cat said good morning with a little bit of coffee, and that's my cue to go ahead and take a sip. Gia is saying smash the like. So go ahead and smash the like, peeps. I would really appreciate it. Hit those likes. Quit being weak, said Fade and Tradfi. Gotta love it. Jonathan Derby said, my bad, I haven't looked at the charts today. I was going off yesterday's LOL. Okay, so Jonathan, you said something. I'm going to go ahead and disregard it then earlier. Let's see. Bad money, go back down. LOL. Very funny, very funny. Referring to the Dixie, I'm thinking. Yes. So was this a dip to buy? I think it was a dip to buy overall. I did. I bought BitX, which is a double leverage ETF traded just on the Robinhood app, right? You can get it wherever you buy Apple shares if you want. Why didn't I buy spot Bitcoin? Well, because I really don't want to increase my my average entry point if I can help it. And I also think that we might get a flash crash back down to 30,000 where I have a couple limit orders. Now, this episode is not going to cover why I think we might go back down to 30,000. But perhaps I'll put out a video on that somewhat soon. Let me also caveat, I think there's probably like a 10% chance we do that. So I'm not saying we're going to go down to 30,000. I'm saying that if we do, I want to be one of the ones that buys up, the scared money that's leaving the market. All right, let's go ahead and get into it here, guys. This is the story So Eric Balconis, who's kind of been the leading journalist when it comes to the spot Bitcoin ETFs, he said, people tagging me like crazy on this rejection report. We have heard nothing to indicate anything but approvals, but I want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, so I'm asking any sources if he's just speculating. He seems to be a Bitcoin bull and recently tweeted. At this point, saying SEC rejecting, it isn't just going against James Seyffert and I, like it was in the early days. Now you basically saying multiple mainstream news reporters with multiple sources on inside of this also have it wrong too. Not saying it's impossible. Again, we still only at 90%, but it overturns a lot of good intel. Okay, so that's Eric Balconis's take as of 8:30 a.m. today. Okay, so you had all this volatility already happen on the Dixie and Bitcoin, and then Eric comes out with that tweet. Now, what is he referring to? He's referring to this. He's referring to this report that I will now read. It's an executive summary from the Matrix on Target report from the Matrix port. Now, here is kind of before I read this, here's kind of the speculation, is that this reporting organization was incentivized to say this. Let's just put it that way. You can read between the lines. Who incentivized them to say this? I don't know, but somebody benefited quite a bit from this. A lot of traders got wrecked. A lot of liquidity was totally erased. People lost money on this, and when people lose money in markets, somebody made that money, right? It's just an exchange of trade. And let's go ahead and take a look at this report. I'm going to spot read it. Matrix on Target has been bullish against consensus expectations in 2023 and predicting earlier in the year that Bitcoin could reach 45K by Christmas. They were right, okay? Legitimacy. We even expected that if the SEC requirements for the spot ETF were fulfilled, Bitcoin could rally toward 50,000 by the end of January 2024. While we have seen frequent meetings between the ETF applications and staff from the SEC, which resulted in applicants refiling their applications, we believe all applicants fall short of a critical requirement that must be met before the SEC approves. This might be fulfilled in Q2 of 2024, but we expect the SEC to reject all proposals in January. Okay. So that is the name of this. That's the title for this report, why the SEC will reject Bitcoin spot ETFs. Again, the current 5-person voting commissioner's leadership critical for the ETF approval of the SEC is dominated by Democrats. SEC Chair Gary Gensler is not embracing crypto in the U.S., and it might even be a very long shot to expect that he would vote to approve Bitcoin spot ETFs. An ETF would certainly enable crypto overall to take off, and based on Gensler's comments in December 2023, he still sees this industry in need of more stringent compliance. From a political perspective, there is no reason to approve Bitcoin spot ETF that would legitimize Bitcoin as an alternative store of value. Okay. Since traders started betting on the ETF approval in September of 23, at least $14 billion of extra fiat and leverage has been deployed into crypto. So that's an important statistic. At least $14 billion of extra fiat and leverage has been deployed into crypto as of the ETF approval in September of 2023. So that would be the futures. Oh, no. So this is since they started kind of the chatter around these spot ETFs, there's been an inflow of 14 billion fiat and leverage into crypto. Okay, important. Some of these flows might be associated with easier macro conditions as the Fed has turned dovish. However, of those 14 billion in additional longs, 10 billion might be related to the ETF approval expectation. Okay. If there is any denial by the SEC, we could see cascading liquidations as we expect most of the 5.1 billion in additional perpetual long Bitcoin futures to be unwound. We could see Bitcoin prices declining by 20% very quickly and falling back to the 36 to 38,000 range. Suppose market participants have not heard of any approvals by February 5th, 2024. In that case, Matrix on Target recommends that traders hedge their long exposure by buying the 40,000 strike puts for the end of January, or even going outright short Bitcoin through options. not financial advice from Investing Bros YouTube channel. This is, I suppose, investment advice from Matrix on Target, Matrix Port. So I think we'll cut it off there. There's a little bit more. Oh, we're almost done. Even if the SEC would deny the ETFs, we still expect Bitcoin prices to be higher by the end of 2024 than they stated. Than they started in the year 42,000, as U.S. elections bears years and Bitcoin mining years tend to be positive. Goodness gracious. Okay, we got through it, guys. Ultimately, this is a very, very bearish article, right? But one thing to keep in mind here is that Bitcoin Archive showed that this is Matrix Port on the same day. Schrodinger's Bitcoin ETF, right? Is that they had this title that we just read, SEC will reject Bitcoin spot ETFs again, but they also put this one out on the exact same day, right? Bitcoin spot ETF approval imminent, BTC to jump to $50,000 per coin. So you have to kind of do the calculus here. Folks that were reading this report maybe went in and shorted Bitcoin and, caused, I don't know. I don't know that there's a direct causal relationship between that report circulating and the sell-off in price. I think it has a lot more to do with the Dixie, guys. Personally, in my opinion, and I think this is the story right here, is that you had this big wick yesterday of the Dixie all the way up to that midline of the Bollinger Band getting rejected. Okay, you breathe a sigh of relief. Bitcoin shoots up to 45. Okay, but then this morning you get a huge gap up on the Dixie. That is different, right? That's signaling to investors. Okay, well, hold on. Now we've got to figure out what's going on here. Let's hold off, right? So then the buyers completely exit the market, and then there's a bunch of selling because of this report coming out, right? So I think that's that's my biopsy of this situation. Is there anything to be afraid of? I really don't think so. I think that, as Eric Buchanan said in his tweet, right, that there's really, he's still maintaining that 90% likelihood of a spot ETF approval by the SEC. But there's every incentive for big money institutions, for hedge funds, and for general market manipulators to capitalize on this moment of extreme volatility in, as the SEC puts it themselves, an unregulated capital market that you can make a lot of money on, especially if you're a professional hedge fund manager who knows what you're doing. You've been doing this in gold for a very long time. This isn't rocket science to a lot of folks, but you have to scare them both ways. You've got to get the buyers to exit the market with the report, right? And then you've got to spook the market with Dixie coming up, right? So they were probably more predicting the Dixie coming up. But again, I'm getting into speculation that's not needed. Ultimately, we have the facts on the ground. Dixie went up, report came out, buyers vacated, price went down, and then Bitcoin got bought very heavily and aggressively to the tune here of, so it went down as low as 40,006 and got aggressively bought back up 4% almost immediately, right? So that's encouraging to me, right? Because that's where all this is, the wick zone. You can see wicks all the way back here on the 18th, wick back here on the 11th. There's been nothing but wicks south of 41,200 out on the daily chart for Bitcoin all the way back since right in December, right? So December, there's only been wicks, right? At least after the 5th. So that means that Bitcoin the buyers have not vacated south of 41,000. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. We've got a couple more chats here, and then we're going to vacate the stream. Gia S said, "Yeah, I feel manipulation. It's definitely manipulation." And look, if I was a $1 trillion hedge fund manager out here, and I'd done this before in equities, I'd done it before in gold, I'm going to shoot my shot, right? I'm going to try to make something happen, to make some kind of big asymmetric trade and capitalize and return money to my investors, or return money to, the guy who, financed my yacht, right? I'm going to pay off my yacht and I'm going to go do whatever. I'm going to make a bunch of money, right? Indo Crypto saying, calling it now, we won't get the bull until elections. Get candidates to talk crypto equals more votes equals pump it. Okay. That's an interesting take, but I do see what you're saying there. Candidates need to be more crypto oriented. We got DeSantis, who's somewhat pro Bitcoin. You've got Trump, who's like kind of neutral to positive on crypto, as he's done some stuff with NFTs and Ethereum. You've got Ramaswamy and RFK, which are further out, and they're very pro crypto. So yeah, I think there's going to continue to be chatter as the election year progresses. And folks, this is, I think, what we'll end with here. We're about to have a very bullish moment in my prediction. January 10th, and perhaps before January 10th, we're going to have some very, very bullish volatility. Now, it's going to be crazy. Who knows? There could be a huge liquidity event like that we just saw this morning that pushes Bitcoin down to 25,000. Who knows, right? You got to hold on. You got to hold on tight. You're invested in Bitcoin for your reasons, not because of an ETF, not because of some report coming out on the elections and their entanglements with the ETF approval. That's not why you're invested in Bitcoin. If that is, then sure. But I'm pretty convinced that 99% of the people listening to my voice right now are invested in Bitcoin for the same reason I am, because it's better money in the future. It hasn't been hacked since it was initiated in 2009. It is the best currency going forward for the world. It is the best store of value for wealth going forward in the world. Until those theses change, I'm not selling. I'm not selling my significant hodl bag of Bitcoin. That's the reality that I hope you all are in as well. Don't get wrecked by this volatility. There's going to be more. But we are entering into a election season, at least here in the United States. It's going to affect the world because it's a big election, right? Remember that what is important is the people that live in your city, in your region that you live in. Love them. Don't stop loving them because they have a different color on than you do, or they're going to vote for a different guy than you are, right? Seek to de-escalate arguments about politics, right? If someone is visibly upset, they're getting upset, just don't engage. Don't get into that argument, because the person who's making that argument matters more than the ideas in that moment. For you in that moment, ideas are more important than people on a political level. I understand that. What I'm trying to say is flip that on its head. At a local level, when you're interacting with people in the grocery store, just at your house with your family, if you can't get along with your family in politics, don't talk about it, right? Because the people, your love with those people, your relationship with those people is more important than some political outcome. It really is. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that people are much more important. Do I agree with every one of my family members on politics? A lot of them I do, but some of them I don't, right? When I talk to those people, I seek to understand why they think the way they do. I do not seek to try to convince them of anything, certainly not to vote a certain way. Right? That's not for me to do. Now, if someone's open and they want to hear why I think the way I do and why I vote the way I do, then I'm gonna say that, right? So anyway, I think that's an extremely important message as we head into what could be one of the hottest, one of the most highly contested political elections of our time. Make sure that you're putting people first. Yes, we are a giant interest group of crypto as an interest. Right, but ultimately, we need to put the people first. Washington needs to put the people first. I don't know if they'll ever do that again, but we can put the people first. And that starts with the people in your local communities and in your house, your family, right? So do the right thing. Guys, there's going to be more volatility in Bitcoin. Hopefully, it'll be to the upside, but just strap in because it's going to be a wild ride. If there's anything we know about crypto, is that it's volatile, and that's not going anywhere. Keep those hands diamond and stay hydrated and be nice to the people around you. T-Shroom out.
Trying to make paper, turn that batter to cake. Money like Lego, connect the dots, stack bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros. Army pipe, lethal on trade. Entries and exits, worthy of praise. Tim, the professor, the TA. Shout it out loud on the PA. T-Shroom's news got the word. Doing better than what he deserves. Beamer, leave no evidence. Soon fly coop with his dividend. Trying to make paper, turn that batter to cake. Money like Lego, connect the dots, stack bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros.